Welcome back, everyone. I've got a short video for you. My wife was cleaning out a closet and found some pictures that I thought were long gone. And these are some of the cars that I had as a kid. I'm going to say between 1976 and 1980 or 1981. Most of these cars I painted. I think all but one were cars that I actually painted. Basically, I was a kid, had no money, so I bought junk cars, fixed them up, painted them, resold them, and tried to buy a little bit better junk car. Now, none of these pictures are very good. Back in the 70s, and I'm not meaning to be snarky or trying to be smart, but back in the 70s, we took pictures with cameras. And the camera that I had access to was an old Kodak. It did not have a flash. It had no focus. It was just point, shoot, try not to move it or you'd get a blurry picture. Try to have the sun at your back so that you had decent lighting. So none of these pictures are very good, and several of the pictures of these cars, the car is actually in the background. But as I was looking at these, one of the things that hit me is you don't have to have a good picture to bring back good memories. So I'm going to go through these pictures real quick, show you some of the cars I had as a kid, and share with you some of the memories that come with them. This first picture is a picture of my nephew sitting on my brother-in-law's mid-60s. I think it was a Honda 50 or Honda 70. But this was my oldest nephew. He is the one I am closest to of all my nieces and nephews. But in the background is a 1967 Chevy Impala. This had been my mom's car. My dad gave this car to me when I was about 15, going on 16, and made the comment that maybe by the time I had it running, I would have my license. But with the help of my brother Ed and my brother-in-law Donnie, we had this car running and driving in about 2 weeks. Basically, we pulled out the 327, and knowing what I know now, I would have loved to have held on to that engine. But my brother found a running 305, and so we put that 305 back in the car, bolted up to the original Powerglide transmission. This car was originally a light blue, kind of a sky blue metallic, and I did some body work. There was quite a bit of rust on it. I did some body work and I painted it. And when I first started painting, again, I'm a 15, 16-year-old kid, and when I first started painting, the only thing I could afford was implement paint. So I went to our local Farmers Wholesale, and this was a Ford blue implement paint that I painted this car with, but it came out pretty good. I drove this car several years until I was involved in pretty much a head-on collision late at night and totaled the car. But I did salvage the engine and transmission and a few other things out of it before I sent it to the junkyard. This next car, this is the only picture I have of it. I believe it was a 71 Pontiac Le Mans. I bought it off a guy I went to school with, a friend. It originally had the Pontiac 400 engine and transmission in it, and the engine was blown. It had spun a rod bearing. Originally, again, my brother Ed, my brother-in-law Donnie, found another Pontiac 400 engine, which we sat down in it. That engine lasted about a week, and it spun a rod bearing also. So the next option was we took the 305 and the Powerglide transmission that came out of my 67 Chevy Impala, and we put that in this Pontiac. My brother Ed originally told me it would be a bolt-in deal, but trust me, putting the small block Chevy in the Pontiac was not a bolt-in deal. Everything was on the wrong side. But we got it in there, and it ran and drove beautifully. This car was about half light blue metallic and about half red oxide primer when I bought it. I don't remember if those are the wheels that actually came with it or whether I got some new wheels for it. But this again was painted with implement paint. This was International Red, and I put these stripes on it. This was a tape stripe kit. You can see I was somewhat of a Starsky and Hutch fan. I would have liked to have done the Starsky and Hutch type stripe, but I went with this tape stripe instead, and it looked okay. The interior was nice, and again, I drove this car for a couple years. The next car was a '69 Mustang Mach 1. I bought this from my brother Ed. He had bought it from a friend of his. The car had been going to a local racetrack, drag racing, and had hit the wall and then caught on fire. But all the parts were there. It just needed assembled and put back together. The interior was all torn apart. They'd put a new front end on it, straightened the shock towers, and were working on rust around the wheel wells when they just stopped working on it. So I bought this car, drug it home. First thing I did was pull the engine because I wanted to paint the engine bay this time. So I painted the engine bay. I originally painted it white, but I didn't like how that looked. So I ended up going back with black on the engine bay. Again, this car was painted with mostly implement paint. In the end, I decided to change this car to black. So I painted it black, and then I put a little gold stripe around that inset on the side and came forward to the front end. The interior was mostly there, but it was various colors. I had to re-dye the interior, re-dye the dash, the bucket seats. I got some new shag carpet from a local carpet dealer and put that in there. And if you look at the floor mat there on the passenger side, that was a floor mat I believe I bought at Western Auto. It had a little devil standing in flames holding his trident, and the caption was "Dirty, Mean, and Nasty." And that kind of took my fancy. So that's going to come up here later on another car, but I just wanted you to notice the floor mat. Also, there's a Don Garlett's tack mounted up between the humps of the dash up over top of the radio. This is the car that this is one of the two cars that I really wish I'd held on to. It was a 302 engine with a 4-speed transmission. The next one I bought is one of the first ones I ever drove home. This was a '73 Camaro, and it had been hit in the passenger side rear quarter panel, and it had been hit pretty hard. This is also one of the first cars that I painted using acrylic enamel. I'd made enough when I sold the Mustang, the Mach 1, that I bought a Binks, I believe it was a Binks Model 69 paint gun, and then I moved up to acrylic enamel. This car was originally the dark brown metallic, and I put that back on there, but I'd seen cars that had this top half a cream color, and I kind of liked that, but they were all cream, and I wanted to go with the dark brown metallic in the center of the hood, and I thought it turned out pretty good. Some of my friends said it looked mean, so I was happy with that car. It was a 350 automatic transmission as far as I remember. I did have some interior work done as far as partial seat covers. Basically, they just replaced some of the panels in the seat covers, but it was again in nice shape, and I drove it for a little while, and then again sold it. Although I didn't really step up when I sold this, I kind of went back to the bottom of the barrel, as you'll see here in a minute. The next car I never owned. This was a I believe 1967 Plymouth Belvedere 4-door. It belonged to a friend of mine. He had seen some of my paint work and he wanted me to paint it. I told him if he would buy the paint, I would paint it for him. And then I asked him, I said, you know, I've been wanting to try painting some flames on the car. How do you feel about this? And he laughed at the idea of flames on a four-door, but he said, sure, go ahead. And so I painted the whole car black, and I don't have any pictures of it as black, but I painted the whole car black, and then with a Hot Rod magazine, kind of as a design to look at, I started trying to draw the flames on with a wax pencil, and it wasn't going well. I don't have very much artistic ability. So I met this young gal that's sitting on the hood, and she was from Pennsylvania but happened to be in the area because her dad had inherited a house locally, a house that had belonged to his grandmother. And so she was on break from college, and she came out to do some painting in the house. And I met her and found out she was an artist, and I asked her if she would be interested in trying to draw these flames with a wax pencil on this car so I could paint it. Fortunately, she agreed. She came out. When she saw the flames I had drawn, she cracked up laughing, but it didn't hurt my feelings a bit because I knew that my flames were pathetic. So she drew these flames on with a wax pencil, and then I masked them off and painted them. Started with a yellow, and then I kind of fogged in some orange over top of that, and then did red on the tips. And you can't see it, but there's even a silver pinstripe around the edge of the flame. The next thing I drug home, I believe it was a 73 AMC Gremlin. I did drive it home, that was kind of amazing. It ran pretty decent. It also had been wrecked and had a different front end on it. And I don't remember exactly what I paid for it, but it wasn't very much because this car was rough. First thing I did is took off the hood and the doors, and the friend that owned the Belvedere and I took this back across the farm kind of Baja style, and we had a lot of fun in it. And then I brought it in and started working on the body. I did the body work and I painted it, and I had some leftover yellow, orange, and red, so I put this again, trying to imitate this Starsky and Hutch stripe. I would never do that in a rainbow color today, but I was young and naive, and I wanted to use that paint that I had left over from the Belvedere. So anyway, I painted this car black in an acrylic enamel, and put that yellow, orange to red Starsky and Hutch type stripe on the side. Had just a sunscreen in the back. This was the kind of thing you could purchase for a pickup truck window, and I put it in the back mostly to hide how bad the interior looked. Was my primary reason for doing that. If you remember the floor mat that was in the Mach 1 I was telling you about, the Dirty, Mean, and Nasty, well, I bought another set of those, and the same young lady that drew the flames on the Belvedere drew this on the hood of the Gremlin, and I taped it off and painted it. And again, that set the tone for the car. Overall, I was happy with the paint job on the car. The gal that drew the flames on the Belvedere and then drew this Dirty, Mean, and Nasty on the hood of the Gremlin, she did such a wonderful job. I asked her if she wanted to form a partnership, and she said yes, and that partnership goes on still today. As a matter of fact, we just celebrated recently our 40th wedding anniversary. This next picture is one my mother took for me. It was supposed to be me and a little button buck deer that I shot, but it's got the only picture of all of the 68 Camaro I had. This car, again, it wasn't running when I bought it, but it only needed a few minor things like a starter and so on, and I drove this car home, and this was original paint. This was a solid body. This car was not an SS, but it did have a 350 engine and an automatic transmission. Had the vinyl top, good interior, good solid body. Of all the cars I've owned, this was the best one that I ever owned. And I really didn't do much to it mechanically. I didn't do any paint work to it. I could have used a little bit of touch up, but this was a great car, and I really wish that I still had it today. It and the Mach 1, but this was, as far as the originality of the cars, this car was far better than the Mach 1 was. Although the Mach 1 would probably be worth a lot more money. I'm sure it would be today's value. But those are the two cars I let get away. I actually sold this car, and that was needed to help make a down payment on our first home. And that's the reason I sold this car. The last picture is my wife and I out in the mountains of Pennsylvania, where she was from. That is an early 70s Ford, I forget, Country Squire station wagon, I think. My father-in-law gave that to us as a wedding gift. I did paint that car. I painted it back with acrylic enamel in the original green. I don't remember if that had a metallic to it or not, but I remember that was one of the best paint jobs that I ever did. It came out really well. My father-in-law even commented that it looked like it was a baked on enamel. He was really impressed with it. And we had that car several years until an accident. That's pretty much, there were some other cars I had that I don't have any pictures of. I had a Pontiac Ventura. I don't remember, it was maybe 73, 74. It was a V8 4-speed. I had an AMC Eagle station wagon. But I had all these cars, like I said, from probably 1976 to at least 1982. That 6 year, so a 5 to 6 year period. And I painted most of those cars. But after I got married and, wasn't working on the farm, there was no longer time for that and no longer money. Kids came along, life happened, and I wouldn't trade any of that for a minute. And now that I'm older, I'm 60 years old, I'm back to doing something that I enjoyed as a kid, and fixing up an old car. Although this Nova that I'm working on, I don't foresee ever selling it. My intention is to pass it down to one of my kids, and it's to be the best work that I've ever done is the goal for this 1976 Nova. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too long. Hope it wasn't too boring. I thought about calling this video Bad Pictures, Good Memories. But like I said in the beginning, it doesn't take a good picture to bring back good memories. And I'm glad my wife found these, and I'm glad to be able to share them. And I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good evening. God bless.